It's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have James A. Fink. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, Tales of the Witch of Temeshvar, Pawn to Powers. That's available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Books A Million, pretty much wherever books are sold. Head on over there today and pick up your copies. And I do want to take an opportunity to point out that James was brought to our network, People of Distinction, by one of the best publishing companies in the business, Diamond Media Press. So if you or anyone you know have a book that they'd like moved, people, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give. Contact Diamond Media and have their wonderful team move it for you. You can find out more information on them through diamondmediapressco.com. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have James here on the line. So let's bring him here with us, okay? James, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How you doing today?
Not too bad so far, and thank you for having me as your guest.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we're very much looking forward to this. You know, I think, as I stated, the underlying message is something that's superb, right? Something that we can all get behind. But just to have a story, a journey to embark upon, and just take us away, I think you're doing something right here, James. As my grandmother would say, you're cooking with gas. I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I'm loving it here, okay? So this is truly an honor. It's such a treat to have you as a guest. Now, before we go into the book, I want to start off by learning a little bit more about your background, James. So please, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I'm a retired city worker. I worked for the City of New York at Health and Hospitals Corporation for 30-plus years. I worked in the payroll department, and prior to that, I was a landscaper, garden center supervisor for 13 and a half years. And in between, I worked to coat glass with non-reflecting material. So I've had a variety of manual labor and office clerical jobs. I've had a nice long employment history, and I've always wanted to write a book and see where it went. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the reasons why I decided to write this.
James, thank you very much for articulating that. And listen, I didn't want to go into inspiration instantly, but after that background description, how could I go anywhere else? Now, I'm curious because all of the different career paths that you had didn't really have much to do with writing. I'm sure writing fit into it somehow, but it
actually had absolutely nothing to do with writing. In terms of inspiration, no. In terms of anything else, no, not really. But it did give me a whole lot of material in terms of characters that I could use. Mm-hmm. Not so much the names, but character traits that I could use. Believe me, if you ever worked in a garden center and florist and with a landscaper, believe me, you're going to come across a whole lot of really weird and unique individuals, from your bosses to the people you work with in the front lines. Really, sometimes literally crazy.
Well, listen, I believe it, James, and I'm a New England boy, born and raised, but I've spent a lot of time in New York, and I think the same can be said about the city, right? I mean, you have no shortage of characters right there in New York City, so I know that is...
No shortage at all. No shortage at all.
There you go. So
I'm one of them.
You have a wonderful pool to pull from there, James. Now, when it comes to writing, though, was this something that was always a hobby of yours growing up? Where does that love for creative writing come from?
Well, it was actually a little bit of desperation in high school because I was not doing well in English. And my English teacher says, well, why don't you see if you could write a story? So I did. She said, I like your stories, but you're still not doing well in the class. So about the only reason why I passed high school English was because I wrote stories for my teacher.
There you go. There you have it. Well, James, without further ado, let's jump right into the book, Tales of the Witch of Temeshvar, Pawn to Powers. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Okay, well, the town of Temeshvar itself actually exists. It comes under the current name of Temeshvar, and they are in what is now Romania. Temeshvar itself began as a Roman fort and outpost and trading outpost back in the 3rd or 4th century AD. It evolved into an outpost in 1307, and it came under Ottoman suzerainty around the same time. But because they were so far out, they were given a lot of autonomy. That's the town. That's the history of Temeshvar itself. Now, the characters that I'm writing about, Katerina Strelchuk, and all the characters come after that, I set them up as basically she was a baroness. Her uncle is the Baron of Temeshvar. He is a co-rule of Temeshvar with the Pasha Ibrahim Benghazi, who is a second or third cousin to the emperor or the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. And this is all the background for the actual character and stories, and it goes from there. That's basically the background material. Now, the character Katerina Strelchuk is not her uncle's blood relation. She's the daughter of a traveling or a princess from the East. We're not even sure that she's actually from the East, India. So she was left with the uncle to take care of and to train and to educate. And the story actually picks up after she tries to escape an a quasi-arranged marriage or sale to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire's youngest son. He's not having that, and she doesn't want to have any part of him. She was barely able to figure out that she actually liked the Pasha's son and would not mind having been married to him. But the Sultan's son, no.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually the background to the actual story itself. So,
James, curiosity for myself with this next one, but what would you say was a highlight for you in writing the book? Or if not a highlight, something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you began?
How adult it was. Because this story actually grew out of stories I would tell my nieces and nephews. And at that time, it was about a girl who was trying to avoid aging. And she had a fear of aging. She didn't want to get too old. So all the stories that I told them was about this girl's efforts to avoid aging, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I started writing this story, I couldn't really use that because that's a very limiting plot line. I said, what can I do with her now? I mean, we're going to have to either age her up a little bit, or we're going to have to put in more adult situations. And I said, well, what happens if she tries to run away from an arranged marriage? What happens now? She was a baroness. How does she escape that? How does she escape the arranged marriage or the arranged sale to the Sultan's youngest son? How does she manage that? And what happens after that? And what terrible things can happen after that? So that's how the story progressed. And it was kind of surprising to me was, like I said, how adult the story became. And not necessarily in a good way for the main character.
Right. James, who would you say is your intended audience with this book? And a subpart to that, what is the main message that you really hope that they receive after reading it?
Years ago, this story was meant for kids. But now, because it's got various kinds of sexual situations, it's for 18 years old and up.
Mm-hmm.
Not for the kiddies. It's for anybody who's 18 and older. I wasn't thinking of a message necessarily when I was writing it, but choices have consequences. Decisions have consequences. Mm. Sometimes you make a good decision and it comes up with a bad consequence. Sometimes you make a bad decision and you get good results. It's a matter of what you do at the time to move past the situation you find yourself in, or make the best of the situation you find yourself in, if you can, or just simply survive the situation you find yourself in once you're there.
People, again, we're here on the line with James A. Fink. We're discussing his amazing book, Tales of the Witch of Temeshvar, Pawn to Powers. Available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much any online book reseller. So make sure you head on over there today and pick up your copies. James, next question as we start to close out of this fantastic interview. I love having this platform to really be able to pay it forward, in a sense, to other artists out there listening in. Now, you are someone that has gone through the process. You've written this narrative. You've also gotten it published, and hopefully there's many more on the horizon. So this is going to be a culmination of two questions here within one. But first and foremost, what advice would you be able to offer a new writer starting out? And then B, what is next for you? Are there other books in the lineup?
Okay. A, you're going to go into writing as a profession. Make sure you actually have a legitimate profession that you're already engaged in. Bookkeeper, ditch digger, bus driver, politician, chemical warehouse foreman, whatever. Make sure you have a paying job, because writing will never pay the bills immediately. If you are lucky, maybe like Tom Clancy or R.L. Stine, maybe you can make a living out of it. But I would really recommend that if you're going to write and get yourself published, you really have a paying job beforehand, and that you have all your ducks in a row and you're able to pay your bills otherwise. Because unless you hit it big, writing, this is not a good profession to go into. If you want to write and enjoy yourself and do it as a hobby, there's very few other jobs and careers and hobbies you can get into that will give you more enjoyment. If you like telling stories, and 99.9% of the population loves to tell stories, the rest love to hear them. Look at all the politicians. They love to tell stories. Nobody believes them, but they enjoy listening to them anyway. So, if you like telling stories, by all means, write them out, tell them, do it orally, enjoy. Now, where I'm concerned, my book, Tales of the Witch of Temeshvar, Pawn to Powers, that's supposed to be the beginning of a multi-story series. It's been so long and taking so long of time to get this book sold and people's attention. It's kind of tough to go back. I do have a book that I'm currently writing called Mars One, Here There Be Dragons. It's a science fiction story about an alien race that meets up with another alien race from another universe, and all the fun stuff that happens thereafter. And I do not mean fun. It's kind of tough.
James, I love what you just said, because people, listen, here is the cold, hard truth to it, right? When he started off by the words of wisdom for new writers. Listen, and this applies to just artists in general, right? It is not a career path for the faint of heart. It's going to be littered with rejection.
No,
it's going to be a very, very...
40 years ago, I tried publishing something, and I got a couple dozen rejections. I was like, okay, this is stupid. And I even tried getting it published through Vanity Publishing, which was an actual company at the time. And then I had to argue with them to get back my manuscript, because they didn't want to give it back to me, because they wanted to charge me $15,000 to publish it. And now here I am, basically doing a vanity-type publishing project through Diamond Media, and before them another company. And again, while it is satisfying to the soul to get something in print, thus far it has not been particularly financially profitable. So if you enjoy writing stories or telling stories, do so. Just don't necessarily expect to make a living out of it. That's all.
Absolutely. Like I said, people, this is something that, it may be hard to swallow, but it is wonderful words of wisdom. For anybody out there that's embarking on the journey or getting ready to do so, as I stated, he put it out towards writers. I'm putting it out towards artists. Okay. It is something that you may be passionate about, or anybody. Exactly. It is something that you may be passionate about. It is something that you want to invest your time and energy into. But it is something that you should make sure you do plenty of research on ahead of time to make sure that it is the right route for you. And as a main source of income, that is one of those things where you really have to be aware. The vast majority of artists and writers in this instance don't get to make it to that financial lucrative point. A lot of times, if you have...
Many years ago, I did do a little research, and I found out that way back then, and it might be more, it might be less now, but way back then when I was looking to get manuscript published, the statistics were this. 40,000 manuscripts were submitted on an annual basis. Of 40,000 manuscripts, maybe 400 were actually published. And of the 400 that were actually published, maybe about 50 made some money. And of the 50 that actually made some money, maybe 10 actually made enough money for the author to live on for that year. Mm-hmm. I don't think the statistics have changed very much in the last 40 years. Matter of fact, they may even be worse. But those are the statistics that I read years ago when I was doing a little bit of research on this. So again, if you enjoy writing stories, if you enjoy telling stories, do so. Just don't necessarily expect to make a living out of it. If you do, yay! Congratulations.
There you have it. People, listen, I'm going to say it for you again. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, pretty much any online book reseller. Head on over there, pick up your copies of Tales of the Witch of Temeshvar, Pawn to Powers by James A. Fink. You can thank me later. This is a fantastic narrative to just get lost in. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and check back in frequently because we're hoping that there are other ones on the horizon as well. James, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you for having me. Take care. Be careful out there.